Yeah, thanks, Wolf. Thanks, Sarah. Well, the US Senators John McCain and Lindsey Graham sent out a press release tonight stating, quote, the Libyans have won their freedom. Well, it remains to be seen whether this is truly the end for the man who has ruled for 42 years. It's certainly looking that way. Joining us now from our Washington bureau is Mike Barrett. He's a former director of strategy for the White House Homeland Security Council. Michael, for a start, what that involved was a lot of risk assessment. What could go wrong now?
Well, I think obviously the first question we have to think about is who's going to be in charge of this after. You know, you don't just look at the day of the revolution, you have to look at the day after. We don't really know the identities, the affiliations, the tribal allegiances, the propensities towards terrorism or supporting a variety of international crimes and other things that whoever ends up in charge in Libya may actually have. You could certainly end up with a fractious state, sort of like what we started to see there in Iraq, where you have a north, a south, an east, and a west, and they sort of fragment, and you end up with pockets of instability. And so from a U.S. point of view, in terms of our own interest, you know, we have a specific interest, obviously, in peace and stability, but we also have a real interest in making sure that this doesn't become any kind of a haven for al-Qaeda.
It becomes a thing of be careful what you wish for. I mean, that was Ghadaffi must go, but that's a total lottery on really what's going to happen and who replaces him. I mean, the odds of chaos are certainly to be considered.
They are. I mean, one of the things about Ghadaffi is he was in power for 42 years, so he's obviously a smart enough person. He was also a bit insane. I mean, most people who've met with him or listened to his comments, follow him over the years, would tell you he's clearly not right in the head. But he was stable enough, and so that was really the challenge at the end of the day, is to say we have this throughout the Middle East right now. We have a huge amount of turmoil going on. What's going to happen in Yemen? What's going to happen in Somalia? What's going to happen in Syria? And so, you know, we have all of these different balls juggling in the air right now. Obviously, I think the world is a better place without Ghadaffi in charge. But on the other hand, I do think we have to be wary of what tomorrow holds.
Yeah, and it's more, perhaps more, it's a case of the risk of everything becoming fractured, as you described, rather than the risk of al-Qaeda. Are you really concerned about that? It is true that in the east of the country, many people went to fight U.S. troops in Iraq, became jihadists, but you know, there's not been much sign of religious extremism. I just had 2.5 weeks with the rebels in the Western Mountains, saw no sign of religious extremism, no sign of al-Qaeda. How much of a risk do you think that is? It certainly didn't seem that way to me.
No, I don't think that it's particularly al-Qaeda as a base of operations, but it is a situation where they're able to make something out of a space, right? So they can bring in recruits and train in ungoverned spaces. And of course, the global organized crime syndicates where they raise money. Anytime you have a place that like Libya with about 6 million people, but an awful lot of oil money, you're talking about a place where you could go and wash cash and you can get resources. Anytime you have a weak or failing state, you just end up with a lot of uncertainty in the international system. And so things like faked passports and access to international ports, global supply chain, ports of entry. So it's not so much that al-Qaeda would take over like we're concerned with in a place like Yemen, but it's more that, you know, just basically the rule of law will not necessarily hold at the same level we'd like to see.
Yeah, and you especially, of course, is, you know, public and private risk sector management. I'll make a diplomat out of you too, though. You know, one of the difficult things for the United States in dealing with this region in general is to, while protect its interests, look as if you're staying out of it, because this is not a part of the world that likes the US to project its desires and whims on.
That's certainly true, and I think that's one place where we've actually been pretty good at throughout this. I personally was not a big supporter of this particular activity. Given everything we have going on in Afghanistan and Iraq, I thought going into Libya was not in our national interest. But at least we have not tried to go in and stamp Made in the USA all over this activity. I think the president's been right to downplay that, and I hope the State Department will keep that sort of low-level active engagement. I do think that we have a very significant stake in creating order out of chaos, and we're going to see chaos here in the next few weeks and months. And so we do have an important role to play, but we probably need to do it in the shadows.
All right. Good to talk to you, Mike. Mike Barrett there, former Director of Strategy for the White House Homeland Security Council. Interesting perspectives. Appreciate your time.
Thank you. Good night.
All right. US President Obama being briefed regularly on the situation in Libya while he is on vacation. We're going to go live to Martha's Vineyard. That's next right here on CNN. Stay with us.